Morning, wherever you might be, my Dare to Lead Ohana. Look, I have with me today the sister leader of all leaders. When I tell you, this woman is a walking billboard of sisterhood. And she has taken time out of her busy schedule to come and talk to us today during this summit. So, welcome, Dr. Karen Hill-Pruden. How are you doing, sis?
I am wonderful. I am excited about this conversation.
Oh, I am too. I'm telling my people that are listening to this, get your pens ready. No, actually, turn on your recorder because what she's getting ready to drop, you're not gonna be able to write fast enough. Look, I've been in her classes before. I've been at her summits and her conferences, and when I tell you she's all about the bottom line up front, that's what she does, and that's why I'm so excited to have her with us today. So before we get started, Karen, would you share with us a little bit of who you are? Who makes up Karen Prue?
Oh, absolutely. I am a coach for women leaders, particularly women entrepreneurs, as well as women senior leaders. But I am also someone who rose through the ranks from the front line all the way up to the C-suite. And that's where I linger for the last 20 years. But the basic Karen is that I am a lover of people, a lover of God. And I want to influence and impact as many people while I'm here on this earth. And so, how do I do that? I share my knowledge, I share my platform, I share my networks, with everybody in hopes that they can elevate themselves and go further than I went in less time than what it took me to do it.
That is awesome. You know, that it reminds me of a quote that my mom has always shared with me as I was growing up. You have a test to have a testimony to help someone understand what it takes to get beyond that barrier. And your willingness to be able to share your knowledge and expertise and abilities is evident by being here with us today. So thank you. I appreciate that. So let's dig down into the conversation because I know your time is limited and I want to get as much as I can while I sit at your feet. So
You're
let me.
scaring me. You're scaring me.
No, I'm not. You know you ready. You know you ready. Don't even try it. Don't even try it. Now I host a seat at the table leadership mastermind every other month. And it coincides with what you just talked about pouring in and sharing your network, sharing your value, but also amplifying others that are coming to the table to be able to showcase their expertise and, as you coin, bring their brilliance, what lane of brilliance they bring. So you have a framework that talks about amplifying your value. I want you to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Amplify Your Value is a framework that I created to help women articulate what it is that they bring to the table. I found through my career that some of the women leaders that I was interacting with were more focused on relationship type information, relationship type competencies, but not necessarily tying them into the organizational data. And so, Amplify Your Value is a way to quantify what it is that you're bringing to the table, where it is that you need to be, what gaps are involved in between it, and then devise a plan to get there. And so it is basically it is 5 steps. So first of all, you examine your experience and your expertise. You know, how many people have you managed? How much money have you managed? If you are looking to be in the C suite and you are a manager, sometimes C suite budgets are millions of dollars. If you've only managed $10,000, then there's a big gap there,
Yeah.
and so you examine your experience. And your expertise, how many people you've managed, where are these people that you've managed? Are they in multi site, multi states, multi countries? Because that type of information is going to lend to what gaps you need to close in to get to your ideal role, whatever that role may be. Then it's also the levels of the people that you've managed. Who are these people? Are they managers, directors, frontline type things? So you really just look at what have I done up to this point and where am I trying to get to. So the first thing you do is you examine your expertise and you examine your experience and or education, depending on where you need to get to if there's a qualifier that's associated with education. Then the next thing you do is determine what your next level is. Again, identifying what is the next level for me. Someone who's in entrepreneurship, it may be getting more of the market. Someone who's in corporate, it may be a title, a position title, but what is your next level? Because identifying what is your next level will allow you to identify what are the qualifications for where you're trying to get to so that you can do that. And then you close the gap. So now you know what you bring to the table. Now you know what your next level is and what your next level require. What doesn't sure up on your resume? And is it a short term goal, meaning that you can close it within less than 1 year, or is it a long term goal, something that's going to take a little longer than 1 year? And
Okay.
you write it down and devise a plan on how you're going to get that, which is the next step, which is build your blueprint. I certainly believe in articulating and being strategic and intentional in articulating what your plan is, writing your plan down. I'm going to do this, 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 this. This will keep us from going zigzag and maybe
Yeah,
going
yeah.
straight up vertically,
Keep you
because we
focused.
have it written down. And so then you build your blueprint and then you just plan your pivot. That's the final, whatever that pivot may be for you, whether it's to get more of a share of a market, whether it's to get that next position. And so you examine your expertise, you examine your experience, you determine your next level, you close the gap, you build your blueprint, and then you plan your pivot.
You know, that is such a great framework. And I guess I did that without knowing as when I retired from the military and, coming out of the military as a brigadier general, many people, as I've said before, like, so what is that? When you say military, everybody that's a general understandable term. But when you say brigadier general, they're like, "Oh, that's good, congratulations!" And it's like you don't understand what I'm saying.
It's a
you,
big thing.
you don't understand what it took to get to that level.
Mm-hmm.
But I also realized that coming from the military construct into a civilian construct, there were things that Tia had to do to transition what that meant, right? So I had to get other certifications, although I came with a lot of experience and knowledge and had trained thousands. That didn't add up really in the civilian sector. Now that I say, okay, I'm John Maxwell certified, I'm EQ certified, I'm DIS certified, those things are tangible, relatable, contextual things that are realized in the environment. So it is so important understanding the environment you're going into. That next
Mm-hmm.
level is a different environment. So what do you got to do to level yourself up to that? Now, that's a great, great, great framework. So that kind of leads me into my next question. We talk about getting a seat at the table, but once you've gotten there, did you find that the table was actually worth sitting at, or did you realize that the real decisions weren't being made at that table entirely, that it was being made at a different location?
No, I didn't find out that the decisions weren't being made there, but what I did find out is that, yeah, decisions are made at the table, but really you have to talk to the people who are doing the work. And so you are at the most vulnerable state the higher you go up. And so once I became vice president, once I became in the C suite per se, because I'm not doing the day to day work, I had to constantly talk down the line to find out what were processes changing, what system changes, what vendor changes, what heartbreak are the employees going through. And what a lot of people don't understand is that if you make decisions without talking to your people, you're making decisions in a silo, and it may not be the best decision for the current environment that your people are working in. And so although you have the authority to make the decision, you always have to line down, meaning you have to communicate with those that are actually doing the work on a regular basis to ensure that the decisions that you make are representative of the culture, the processes, the systems, and the talent that you're working with at that time. Because talent, system, and processes also change. We buy new systems all the time. We have
All the
people who
time.
retire. We have new employees coming in. And things operate differently when you change something. And I'll say something when you buy a new system, things operate differently. When you bring in a new leader, things operate a little differently. When you have someone who retire, you find out they were doing the work of three people instead of the work
Yeah.
of one person, and you got to hire three people to cover what they're doing. And so you still make the decisions in the C suite, but the decisions are based on the information down the line. And so you are most vulnerable the higher up you go because you aren't actually doing the work. And so having that line of communication open with everyone down your chain is critical to your success.
I couldn't agree more. I used to love walking, managing by walking around is what I
Mm-hmm.
call it, and
Mm-hmm.
getting to know the people that are in the cubicles, because I'm a believer that more minds on a problem can give a better solution or options for the leader to make a more informative decision about whatever that may be. Now, you talked about a key thing that I want to dig a little deeper in, and you just had your summit that
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to be a part of purpose over profit, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
profit, which was a phenomenal experience. And thank you for letting me come in and add value. But you shared in that session about when we talk about systems, AI. Let's talk about the elephant in the room,
Mm-hmm.
AI. And I don't want to kill the punchline because it was so profound when you said it, and I kind of felt a little shame about myself. I said I should have known that. That should I should have coined that phrase. Why didn't I coin that phrase? So I want you to talk a little bit about what you shared in that forum.
So, in that actual session, I talked about the wisdom economy. And the wisdom economy is that as leaders, our role really hasn't changed that much with AI. We still need to know the capabilities of our talent, our systems, and our processes. AI cannot mimic a lot of the leadership competencies that we need to operate on as leaders or even as day to day workers. And so that session talked about what those limitations are, like lived experiences. AI only has what is put in by us. It doesn't have a memory. It doesn't have any humanistic qualities. It's input and output. And in the world that we live in today, where people are a little bit fearful of AI, I am um, more and more going into workplaces, introducing to them that AI is not something to be feared, it's just something to be understood of how it operates. And then you need to understand the humanistic qualities that are required of leadership. And then what the system itself is capable of doing, which is just collecting and batching information and spitting it back out. I hate to say it in such a simplified way, but really, that's all AI really does. It collects information that is put into it, batch it up, find a commonality based on the questions that's asked, the information that's asked of it, and then it outputs it back out. It doesn't have the relational type history that we as business owners would deal with in terms of customers, that we deal with in terms of vendors, in terms of problem solving with systems and all of that. It doesn't have that unless you put that in,
Hmm.
in which you don't put everything in your systems. You just don't. Some stuff you just deal with and move on to the next problem. And so that session really deals with the leadership competencies that still stand as leaders, that we need to know the capabilities of our systems, our processes, and our people, which are the three buckets that run any business.
Systems, processes, and people.
Correct.
I hope the audience is catching on to the theme because you said that before. It's the theme of understanding what is important as leaders to keep those three things, systems, processes, and people at the forefront of any decision you make. But to have a successful business, you got to make sure that you're giving equal and balanced time to all of those things.
Yep.
And that takes focus. I call it the Sid Law approach. Is you got to be strategically focused on what it is that you need to do. You need to be focused on people, processes, and systems. You got to understand the intentional value that those three things bring to the table. And then you have to be decisive and disciplined to make sure you incorporate those things before you make a decision that can just totally rock the boat of your organization and your ability to scale. This is good stuff. I know the audience is going to be like, wow, when is Karen coming back? When is she coming back? So I'm telling you now, you're coming back. All right, so I'm gonna move on to our last question because I know your schedule is busy and I want to find out what's going on in your sphere that we could share with the community. Karen, for the audience to know, is a data addict. Yes, I said it. She is a data addict. Watch when I read this last question and how her face just lights up when I give the data. Here we go. This one is about the broken rung versus the glass ceiling. While we often discuss the glass ceiling, at the C suite level, data shows the real issue is the broken rung, the first step up to management. Data from 2026, according to LinkedIn 2026 State of Women in Leadership report, women hold 31% of leadership roles worldwide, despite making 44% of the workforce. The most alarming trend is the sharp decline in representation as career progression. Female representation falls by 30% in the single step from vice president to C suite. The question is, how do we fix the entry level leadership pipeline so that the C suite dip does not become an inevitability? Talk to me.
Yeah. So it's a couple of things coming into play. There are internal factors and there are external factors. And what I mean by internal factors is factors that are associated with each individual candidate that may be stopping them from going as high as they desire to go in the C-suite. And the external factors are culture, environmental biases, and different things like that. And so I'll talk about the internal factor first. Very little people talk about what is needed to make the transition from a manager to a leader. Individuals in the C suite are not managers, they're leaders. They're not synonyms, those words are not synonyms for one another. Managers are focused on day to day. As a leader, I'm already working on the 3 to 5 year plan, which means I'm not focused on day to day. And so if you are a manager who have your eye on the C suite, some candidates believe that if I work hard enough, if I just work hard enough day to day, that they'll tap me on the shoulders and put me in the C suite, not realizing it's a totally different skill set. That
Mm,
skill set involves you reviewing benchmarks, reviewing competitors, knowing what they're doing in terms of their services, their service levels, how they're rating in their industry, knowing your data that's associated with your business. And a lot of women candidates don't talk in data form,
mm,
and so data is where your value is. It's where your undisputed value is. Why? Because you can verify data.
facts.
Quantitative data.
Hmm.
Qualitative data is our opinions, some of our biases, and we need that a little bit too because that gives us a part of the story. But the undisputed factual information of business, did we make our numbers? Is quantitative data, and a lot of women candidates don't even learn the number side of business. They focus more on the relationship side of business without knowing the number side of business. And the number side of business is where you articulate how are you adding value. What changed in this environment since you've been in that role? Whether it is terms in terms of service delivery, whether it's reducing the cost of production, whether it is increasing the number of people in succession planning. What changed about the dynamic of this business? And so, if people do not share with you that there's a different set of skill set, you don't know to work and cultivate and elevate that additional skill set, even communicate using that type of skill set because you need to talk in numbers. You got to talk. You got to start talking in numbers. And as women, we view it as bragging when we're talking about our receipts. Oh no, it's not bragging. Unless they were standing beside you when you accomplished it, it's just telling them who the whole you.
The holistic of who
Yep.
they have in their presence.
Yep, it's all about because they may be unaware. They may you can come into an organization have 20 years worth of experience. They've only worked with you for 1 year. All they're judging you on is that 1 year of interaction. But what about the 19 years worth of interaction and experience that you got prior to that? You got to let them know through the terms that you're using, through the impact that you're making in the workplace. Environmental, um, in terms of external, is the higher up you go, there are less positions.
Oh, I know that for sure.
So just like most of the world are C-suite students, I mean are C students. When it comes to the C-suite, as you're moving up, it's fewer and fewer positions. Most of the people are in middle management because that's where most of the tasks are being done. But
Hmm.
as you're going up, so another reason why is because there are fewer positions. How do you make yourself stand out when there's fewer positions and people aren't rotating and turning over those positions on a regular basis? People don't jump C-suite positions every year.
No, because it's competitive to get there.
Yeah, and then the more you know about an industry, the more valuable you are.
Mhm.
And so from an environmental standpoint, because there are fewer positions, now you have all of these managers who are vying for a very small number of positions, and individuals don't know how to stand out. And again, the only way that you can stand out is to articulate your value or amplify your value. How do you amplify your value? You have to show and tell them how did the atmosphere change by you being in that role at that particular time. And so it's twofold. Um, and people just need to talk about it so that women leaders would know how to focus on it. I check off many boxes. I mean, I've worked in 6 different industries. Last 20 years, I've been in senior leadership. Most times, I'm the only woman at the table and the only person of color and the only woman at the table. So they get to check off two boxes.
Yeah, I
Um,
got you on
yeah,
that.
with me, and it, that's the reason why I am a girl boss, a girl coach, a girl mentor, because I want to see more of us. But part of the hard conversation that I have with even my potential clients is that you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're
Mm.
focusing on the wrong thing. Let's talk numbers. Let's talk about how you add value. Let's talk about how you weave that in your everyday communication so that it doesn't come across as bragging. It just comes across as you giving the like people give the state of the union, you're giving the state of the business.
I like that. I like that. State
You're
of the
giving the
business
state of the business
and how
to the
you bring
point,
value to it.
yeah, to the point where people want you in the room because they know that you bring that. I hate it, but it happens to me a lot where someone say, "Hey, we're meeting at 1 o'clock, and they forgot to invite you. Can you come to this meeting?" And it's after 12, and it's like, let me check my calendar. But what has happened is they know that I need to be in the room because of my skill set. That is the way that you want to add value to an organization where people start looking at the addressees on a meeting and say, "Yo, Tia's not here. Tia has to be in this room. Otherwise, we're going to have another meeting after the meeting." You want them to recognize what it is that you bring to the table and know that you're supposed to be at that table if they're really trying to get done what it is that they want to get done. And that's really how you close in the gap. You work with them individually on how they show up in the workplace. And then you also inform them and educate them on, look, it's not that many positions as you move up, and sometimes you only get one shot.
One shot. Yeah.
You know,
And if you miss that opportunity, it's
yep,
not getting prepared. You got to be prepared.
yep. You might have to go to another company because, and it's sad to say, but if you take an interview with an organization, people have long memories,
Yeah.
and they may
Information
not,
travels
yeah, they
at
may not
different
invite you
networking
in for,
events and
yeah,
dinners and yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
they
know
may
how that
not
game is
invite you
played.
in for an interview again, and so when you get that shot, you want to make it work for you.
Awesome. Those are nuggets that we don't think about. We don't, no one articulates that to us. We do the relationship part well
Hmm.
because I think it's innate in us as women to culture and to nurture, right? But to get at the brass tacks, the bottom line up front is being able to stand flat-footed in an environment where they understand that you left that organization or that position, that department better than when you found it. And there's factual data that is not only tangible, but it can be visual as far as the environment and culture and climate that has changed because of your leadership. So those are some great nuggets. I appreciate that. Well, I know I got to let you go, but like I said, you're coming back. You don't have no choice. You're coming back. So before we go, I want you to tell the audience some things that are going on your platform.
Absolutely. So we are kicking off for this year's my conference is October 2nd and 3rd, which is later in the year. However, everything that I do throughout the year works towards the conference. And so we just finished up the summit where we had the brilliant Tia, among other leaders up there. And we are getting ready to revamp our Just Facebook series. Just is an acronym for Just Us Sisters Talking.
Ooh,
And it is a weekly free Facebook series that I did in 2020 during the pandemic. And I put out a survey and said, hey, this popped up on my Facebook feed. Should I bring this back? And I wasn't prepared for the response. I wasn't prepared for the response, but they said yes. And so we're going to bring the Just series back and pour in to some women leaders and entrepreneurs about the various competencies to run businesses. Um, the focus on the three buckets. I mean, systems, processes, and talent, capabilities. And we'll talk about something different every week. And so I'm excited about that. And then, of course, it's still Women's History Month. So I'm all
yes.
over on different people's platforms because, it's reciprocal. They come over here and I go over there. And so I'm just like all over for the rest of the month. And I'm excited about just celebrating women brilliance. It's so many women leaders who are doing the do out there, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm a cheerleader for women leaders who are just doing their thing. And so I want to go out and support as many women as possible. But so I would encourage everybody to just stay connected with me on social media. I have a free community called Sister Leaders Community. If you join that community, my people and I usually drop everything in there that I'm doing, and I do a lot of stuff for free. We got to make money too, but
Yeah.
I do a lot of stuff for free
And she does.
because
I can attest to that. She does.
yeah, because that is part of my philanthropy.
Yeah.
Is giving out free knowledge. Now, what people do with it, that's up to them, but I give it to them.
It's not lack of knowledge that you're not sharing for sure.
Yep,
Well, we
absolutely.
appreciate that. We appreciate you coming on, appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your insights that have been invaluable insights given today. And I always say nuggets of wisdom. I encourage the audience, take what she shared today, chew on it, digest it, and then put it into action so that you're moving forward and closer toward your goal because she shared some gold nuggets here today. And I'm appreciative that she's my friend, my sister leader.
You're my
And
sister
I
leader.
am so excited again for you. Just thinking enough of the Dare to Lead Differently Summit to give of your time throughout your busy schedule. We appreciate you. So, as we always say, Dare to Lead Differently, Johanna, I'll see you when I see you. Peace.
Jeez, I like that.